or something, because you look familiar.
I tell people I don't get out much, but I tend to be a little bit Florida Channel famous. So.
That could be
oh, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be. Yeah, because I'm like, I didn't think of that either.
She seems really familiar, though.
Well, maybe because I don't know why. Because you look like you're familiar. We're on.
We're on.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the green room. We're waiting on Dr. Barry, so I'm going to kill some time here. So this morning, we're going to have another legislative session. As you guys know, everyone listening out there, we've had our legislative session here in Florida for the last couple of weeks. So we're lucky today to have someone who's up and fighting in Tallahassee a lot. Jodi, and I'll have you introduce yourself in a minute. Just some quick updates. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday, but Governor Cuomo up in New York. That's funny. So Governor Cuomo up in New York ended up passing some legislation to actually put rec into place up in the state of New York. So that was a very exciting day for New Yorkers. Yeah. Hopefully Florida will not have the THC cap. That's what we're hoping for. never mind rec. So we're a little bit behind the times. So Jodi, I'm going to have you introduce yourself a little bit. So everybody welcome, say hello to Jodi, and our audience, just so you know, Jodi, because we do stream on YouTube, we have followers that are not just Florida based. So we do talk about other topics because our base is actually nationwide. So anyways, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you very much. It just so happens that I'm kind of known pretty nationwide too. When you work in cannabis policy, as long as I have worked in cannabis policy, we were a very small group 25 years ago. Look, Dr. Barry. So
listen, when people don't activate the turn signal, it makes me crazy. Hi, Jodi.
Good to see you, Dr. B. So I've been working in what we're going to call cannabis policy for more than 25 years. When I was 17, I wanted to have a cannabis business. And when I was 17, the only way to have a cannabis business, was to either break the law or spend your entire adult life trying to create the system in which you could have a cannabis business. So basically, my entire life has been spent in this policy. I understand the medicine. There was a time in my life where I was like, it can't possibly be medicine. It's good for everything. And then, of course, we learned about the endocannabinoid system. So it is good for everything because of that regulating system. But, 25 years ago, we didn't realize that. We just realized it was a criminal justice issue. Some people were using it medically. About 10 years ago, Florida Cannabis Action Network, after having looked at all the ways you can change the law, said, well, in most states, there's only a couple ways to change the law, through the legislature. In Florida, we have a couple other options. We have some things that the executive branch can do, kind of by fiat, executive fiat. We have some things that the people can do. We are all familiar with what we did with Amendment 2, right? Taking it to the people. That's not something that's available in every state. And then we have the legislative branch. And when our little grassroots gang of, a few dozen looked at this and we said, we don't have the $15 million it's going to take to change the law through the Constitution. Constitutional amendments, as we learned, are expensive. What we can do is we can try and influence the 160 men and women that make up the Florida legislature, because we believed and still believe that all politics is local. When Don and Matt Gaetz got out front in 2013 and 2014 and passed what became our first medical marijuana law, that maybe created the beast, they did so because somebody they knew, the Mosleys, reached out to them and was able to influence them. Now, was it going to be good financially? Was it the right time? Was Sanjay Gupta there? Had Florida Cannabis Action Network been banging on the gates in Tallahassee for 3 years? Absolutely, it was a perfect storm. But for the last 10 consecutive years, people like you and Dr. Barry have written little checks and big checks to make sure that there was somebody who understood the national and international impact of cannabis policy as a watcher. So Florida Cannabis Action Network is there. We have trained up hundreds of people to understand the legislative process, to get in there and do battle. I'm actually in the district. Welcome to my home. And in the district, that's kind of insider lingo for when the lawmakers go home. Yeah. And Chef Nala Crail, shout out to MMJ Knowledge, and Chef Mary Adams have actually been holding the Florida Can banner high. Wait, that might be enough.
Yeah, these guys, yeah, no, great. No pun intended. Listen, Jodi, so one of the greatest pleasures that I have in this, in this space, and when Ruta and I do the green room, first time I've ever been actually officially late. You can usually set my clock. No, but it's seasoned down here. But one of the greatest pleasures I have with Ruta is introducing her to the original OG Canna Warriors in this state. And I will say, Jodi has been one of my earliest contacts here. And for sure, so inspired by her story. And she truly loves the plant, believes in the plant, fights for full access for every individual to utilize the plant to its full ability with home grow and, really full every progressive reform step. Wow. Now we're talking about expungements, of course.
And you started talking about New York.
Yeah, we just started.
Well, I know. Well, listen, that's the legislative. Wow. That's the legislative branch that unfortunately we don't have here in Florida. I think they're the third to do it legislatively.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very interesting.
And here we are stuck. So it's Thursday again, Jodi. And do we expect a Supreme Court decision today? So there's so many issues. So why don't you tell us where we're at? I label this as a halftime pep talk. Okay.
And you didn't even start with a softball. That was really.
The point is, it's halftime a session.
It is.
And listen, Ruta, you got to see what they have going on up in Tallahassee. They literally have a board, a war room board, where they track all these laws. That's why I've always been so impressed by Florida Can and why I do support Florida Can, and everybody should, because they do. They boots on the ground, follow these bills, and really try to put the pressure on where they are. So I will throw you the softball, Jodi. We're halfway through. Just give us your impression on where we're at and where we're going and what's up there.
Well, thank you. And we are halfway through. Some people will know that the legislature meets for 60 days. The season lasts a couple months longer than that, but session itself is when they can actually get on the floor and start passing bills. So up to this point, we've just kind of talked about it. And then they go into this 60-day marathon session. So
can you imagine having to do this all year, though? I mean, can you imagine having to pay attention to this type of stuff all year? So, I mean, maybe 2 months is a blessing. I don't know.
Well, yes and no, because, part of why people don't know a lot about Cannabis Action Network is because this is what you do all year. We have 160 constituents, and this is what we do all year. We're not at the conferences because that costs money, and you can't be in front of a lawmaker and be there. Now, I have met Commissioner Freed at some conferences. I'm not saying you don't see him there, but for the most part, with this being a Republican-led legislature, we see lawmakers in their district, and we do it all year round. So where are we at? 1455, we believe, is officially dead. So that's the caps portion of the bill. Yay. And that's a good news and the bad news, though, right? Because there's no good without the bad in Tallahassee. And if you got past the caps, which we're totally opposed to capping what doctors can do. We're capping amounts of THC other than the cap that has been recommended by the panel. We certainly supported that. We were there in the room when it was happening. Well, we were in the room for part of it, and then we went to the Capitol and did an intentions work because there was nothing we could do there. Better to go someplace and pray. But there were things in that bill that we need. they have not created, they being the Department of Health, doesn't have a third-party tracking system in place yet. Can you tell me how many batches of product have failed for contaminants? Because I can't. Can you tell, looking at it, how many batches of flour have failed for having heavy metals? Because I can't. And without that third-party tracking, neither can the Department of Health. There were things in this bill that would have allowed for, and I have been racking my brain because I believed that we had put everything we needed for strong third-party testing. I'm in favor of legalization. And what legalization means to me is that no person ever needs to go to jail for possession of cannabis again, and that there is a regulated and controlled system by which people who are authorized can get products that are pure, precise, and predictable, that they are properly labeled. So third-party testing is something that we just have from the very beginning.
And it's a statute, right, Jodi? It's statute, right?
Yes, we thought so, but apparently the Department of Health doesn't think that they can go in and grab a product off the shelf or walk into a dispensary and take it, or walk into a field and grab it. And I don't understand how they wouldn't feel like they had that authority, but they were asking for it in 1455. So we're gonna try and figure out how we can make sure that happens. Because at the end of the day, and I'm speaking to the choir here, protecting vulnerable patients is the reason the Florida Cannabis Action Network stepped back and let organizations like United for Care and Florida for Care go forward, because we had to take the patients out of the battlefield. That's first and foremost.
Jodi, can I ask you though, then, as Florida can, since that's such a high priority of yours and such an important thing, why don't you talk to a legislator about introducing it as a separate bill? Like not, obviously not this session, but how come you guys haven't approached it as a separate bill with a lawmaker and just said, why don't you guys put it on the table as a separate bill?
Again, we didn't even realize there was a problem. I was with Dr. Barry until this session. We would have said we put third-party testing. We gave the Department of Health all of the options that they needed. And certainly at this point, that's one of the things that we're doing, is looking. And you can move things this late in the session. You can do it by amending a bill that's moving.
Yeah, but they seem to shoot down all the amendments even, so I don't.
Well, the friendliest amendment of adding, sickle cell, disease, was unfriendly.
Right.
But I think what Jodi's talking about, it's incremental steps. And listen, I think one of the things that one of the reasons that Jodi and I have always had the relationship that we do and we see eye to eye is that, I'm also for legal adult use, of course, with education and safety and regulation. And I think Jodi has always recognized that medical is an integral part of that step-by-step process that we have to go through pretty much everywhere. We have to bring the acceptance to society first of seeing it as a safe alternative.
But do all the states actually go through that before?
Each state does different.
I mean, they do it differently. So I think that's one of the issues, is there's no set protocol, even state to state, for medical marijuana or legalization, period.
But the point is, she's let me play in her sandbox, right? And I mean that, no, seriously, because as a doctor, we have a certain role to speak to as we go towards legal adult use reforms. So I think we both appreciate where we come from, and that, Jodi has appreciated the outlook that we need to have as a medical program. And I surely appreciate the fine work that those guys have done to lay the groundwork for me even to do what I'm doing now. Right. So it's a long-term battle.
But even for the physicians, because you guys, the physicians get together on calls, and it's an important thing. I think the safety is a huge issue. And I think even to go as Florida Can does, I think Jodi's leading a great by example. I think a coalition of physicians even to say, hey, this is a safety issue now. We need to make sure the state can go in, like you said, go into a dispensary, make sure it's medicine and it's not tainted by anything. That's critical. Even as a physician.
All of it, Jodi. We don't have a form for exemptions. We don't have a form for exemption of flour. They talk about, all these different things that they've done, but they've never implemented. And that's, because Rick Scott laid it out from the get-go for the OMU to impede this program. Don't teach the doctors. Don't teach the patients. Don't put out logical, messages to the public about the use of medical cannabis. We know where we started from, so we've been fighting from behind from the get-go.
Right. Well, I think to your point, it is that no state has done it the same, and since 1996. We have evolved nationally. Our national consciousness has evolved, and what we know about the plant has evolved. So I think as we move forward, there are states who will heed the advice of the Washington state. I was at a conference in New York, an international cannabis conference, cannabis policy conference. And the first speaker said that if your state has not yet done medical marijuana, they should do both medical marijuana and adult use, lest you leave anyone outside the color of law. And so as we get further along, maybe by Minnesota, we'll see something like that. They're pretty practical up there. And it just,
I was going to say they're a practical state. South Dakota just passed.
I was happy to hear that you believe that 1455 is dead, Jodi. Now, do you believe that because it's not going to go to third House committee? Or do you believe that's because Senator Brandes and others are going to stand up ultimately and squash it? Or do you believe it's because the governor's mishmash statement of the other day is going to put the kibosh on it? And it was a mishmash statement. He said some very bad things in his statement to the extent of the products that are available and things of that nature. So it was hard to know where he was really coming from. But I'm thrilled to hear that you believe that 1455 is dead. Why do you think that's the case at this point?
Well, yes, to all of the reasons that you said. We've heard from the very beginning that Senator Brandes had no appetite for that. And kudos to the Green Room for having Senator Brandes as a guest. Pardon me. So if I know where to find Senator Brandes, he'll be with Dr. Barry. Got it, if I need him. So that, and I think that, I know that this has been one of the greatest movements of the marijuana, of the medical marijuana community that lawmakers have ever seen. And it had to terrify them. And it was a happy day for me. So, all along, we believe that and have been working towards creating a constituency of voters that feel the same way about marijuana policy as gun rights advocates feel about guns, and the AARP feels about the AARP. And in my happy place, I would have all the money that I need, and we would have created a foundation that would have been about consumers. Because really we have people who are, and I have a hard time taking money from the industry, though we're blessed when we get our small checks, because we want to be able to hold the industry accountable. And it's kind of hard to hold them accountable with the left hand holding the right hander, they have your in your pocket. But in a perfect world, we'd be able to do those kind of things. I think that when they start to see the power of this many people making phone calls, and we've asked all along that our key people, and we have key people in a lot of key districts, and they've been making personal calls. A lobbyist told me once that a lobby firm will sometimes hire one lobbyist to get one vote. Sometimes votes. Now, they're not so close in Florida these days because of the makeup of the Florida legislature being so heavily handed Republican and Democrat. But if you can get a key Republican or two to swing your way, then you can kind of start to, one of these days I'm going to learn to play Go. Because I think when you move something in Go, a whole bunch of pieces change colors. Well, if I were really doing my job, I'd have stopped and learned to play the game Go 10 years ago. That's why it took so long. But if we can influence key people in key districts, and this becomes very complicated, very serious technical stuff. It's not fun. It's not the stuff you get invited to talk about at conferences. But it is the kind of stuff that moves policy.
It's the long game. It's the long game. We got to look at who are the freshmen, who are the younger house people, so they don't go there again. This stops us from getting what we want every year. That's the most frustrating thing.
Thank you. So why is 1455 going to die? Because very quietly, a lot of people have been going to the leadership and saying, we don't want to have to be put on a vote on this. We're getting a lot of feedback from our constituency, and the cannabis movement is rising up, and 500,000 people is a huge voting block.
It is.
When you think about a race like JJ Rodriguez's in Senate 39, he lost by 37 votes. 25,000 votes would have been the difference between U.S. Senator Nelson and U.S. Senator Scott, and it would have been the difference in the governor's race. So 25,000 as a vote, we're huge, we're powerful. I have goosebumps. We've had to hide for so long as a cannabis community. And I know this is a story about medicine, but isn't wellness the story of medicine? Isn't that why we need it? And when we can be well, and then we can be heard, and then we can take these powerful stories, I think that's what changes it. So 1455 was doomed from the start because the cannabis community got on it. We are seeing some movement in Senator Bracey's bill, which is going to expunge low-level. It's been through its first two committees.
In the Senate.
In the Senate. Yeah, but I think the House was, if we don't get it this year, we'll get it next year. It's one of those kind of bills.
The long game, once again.
Jodi, how do you think everything would change if, say, President Biden goes ahead and in the near future goes for federally legalizing marijuana as a whole? How do you see the game changing then on every level?
Slowly. Yeah, slowly. Look at, so, and man, see, now she leads me right in.
That's why it's the green room, Jodi. We've got a lot in the can.
And March is Women's Month. I'm just going to go there.
Oh, but it's April 1st.
It's April 1st, yeah.
By the way, I was going to lead the show. I was going to lead the show by saying I was late for the show because I was taking the legalization call from Governor DeSantis himself. But I know it's April Fool's.
No fooling. No fooling. So, first of all, I think that we have to remember cannabis constituents are legal. And that brings up two bills that are moving in the Florida House that are cannabis bills. And these are the bills that will remove pharmaceutical products made with cannabis from the Controlled Substance Act. And there is a bill moving through Florida that will pass that's going to take Epidiolex off of the Controlled Substance Act. So we've got two. Now, when we pass that first program, and this is, people aren't paying attention. One of the MMTCs are making pharmaceutical medicine that they are trying to get past the FDA. And I wouldn't be surprised if 5 of them aren't. And the reason I say that is if you look back at that original, and I'm not in their insiders, but I was there at the beginning. And the purpose of the DOH was to help these 5 license holders to make medicine.
It was the Department of Compassionate Use back then, Jodi. They took the compassion. That was one of the early bad jokes when they took compassion out of the program and changed it to the Office of Medical Marijuana Use. Of course.
We took rehabilitation out of the Bureau of Prisons. We take compassion out of the Bureau of Medicine. But, you know, so we really have to be very careful. So if you were watching, Biden's not changed his position.
Very bad.
Never had.
Cannabis use has resulted in disaster. No, it's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, he's not been a fan.
It was one of the worst stories of the week last week to see that.
And that's not a new story. He was a drug war hawk in Congress. People that have been doing this as long as I have did not see President Biden as the great hope
for
this movement that some people saw. So to answer your question, it would be slow. You know, my organization helped work with the United Nations, and we have representatives who were working very closely with the WHO as we began the work to get CBD removed internationally. So as we removed CBD products internationally, and that trickled down to the United States, but there was several years where the international community recognized CBD before it was taken out of the Controlled Substance Act in Congress. So let's say tomorrow, the MORE Act is passed. Hallelujah. And it will be reintroduced. We have our lobbyist, our federal lobbyist is going to be joining us for the 20th.
Susan, by the way, Susan Nyland.
Oh, this is
right,
okay.
Jody?
Oh,
Yeah.
Who's a friend,
good friend of mine,
yeah.
Oh, excellent. So Susan's going to be with us at the 20 on 420.
Oh, super.
Yeah, for sure. No,
Oh,
there's a
that's
ton of
very
connections. That's why I said, that's why I love the green room,
Yeah.
because seriously, Ruta, you get to meet so many people like Jody, and
Oh.
you know, I know Gary Stein was in, and Ron Watson was in, and you know, Jose Belen was in,
Yeah,
you
very
know,
cool
so
people.
these
Well,
are really
I'm not
the
a
core.
celeb. So it's
No, these
good
are
for
the core
me.
OG. And listen, Jody, when you noted that it was a concerted effort by the cannabis community that did drive 1455 pushback. And I gotta, you know, give Ron Watson all the credit for this. When he was on a couple of weeks ago, we discussed it. He told me 6 to 7 months ago, he goes, Doc, if you get the white coats together, you know, I'll lobby for free for you guys, okay, up in Tally. Seriously. He goes, you guys don't need money. You just need to organize. You just need to organize. And that literally did start Shelley Beasley and myself and
Great,
Michelle
you're great.
Weiner and a few others really in meeting, you know, on that every other Wednesday consistent basis. Got to give Charlie Felix, of course, a big shout out on that too, you know. And Eric Stevens, you know, of course, you know, so there has been, and I think it is. And Jody, what I found out also is that we're unique in Florida of having this discussion and organization amongst advocates like yourself and the doctors groups. And, you know, we're trying to get the MMTC, believe it or not, medical directors now to join together so that we get some mortar to the bricks on that end, right?
That'd be great.
So we're really trying to organize all the communities. You know, I saw that some of the larger doctor groups were up in Tallahassee a couple of weeks ago. You know, the CanMDs and Doc MJs and us, and, you know, they may have a different business philosophy than we do, but we're all pulling on the rope together. So I think it has been that organization, and thank you so much for, you know, the initial inspiration on that a number of years ago. But it was Ron, you know, literally who charged the fire under me to make sure that we got the doctors organized this year. So to the extent that that's been an additional help to you, you know, I'm joyous over that, you know, and we're going to continue to do that. We learn, and we've learned from other states too. If we don't protect our medical program as we go forward towards legal adult responsible use, then we're going to lose our medical program.
Sure will.
And we don't even have the testing yet. And, you know, that's crazy how, you know, be it MJ Freeway or whatever it is, that they haven't over 4 years, Jody, done that seed to sale tracking system that we all know they've been charged to have. It's just one.
And
of
I'm
the
sure that, but the thing
things.
is, and I'm sure they have it, because I can't see the growers not having it. I can't see the
Well,
dispensaries not having controls.
It's not the growers.
Yeah.
The growers do.
Yeah.
That's part of, they have to have seed to sale
They have
tracking.
to have it, yeah.
The state has not implemented one that
Fair
brings
track.
them all together. So the state doesn't have a backtrack.
Backtrack.
You should
That
be
would
able
be-
to, and again, it's all about control. And when representatives like Roach say that, you know, there's cannabis going out the back door, and I get offended when I hear people say that. And unfortunately, I hear people say it that might know that it's true, that there's cannabis going out the back door. I want cannabis for everybody. I want lots of cannabis for everybody. But I also want our program to be what we intend it to be, because we don't grow by being exactly what they expect us to be. When I go to Tallahassee, I don't look like a hippie. It was kind of astounding the first time I showed up and found that there was a lady, a lobbyist wandering around wearing patchouli. And I thought, well, I'll never get to be the patchouli wearing, because that job's taken. So I put on a suit, and, you know, I wore my hair in a tight bun until I was 50, because I thought by the time I was 50, if they're not taking me seriously now, it's not my hair. You know, we went the other extreme.
No, and I agree. Like, I mean, I think there's still a battle, even like with the Representative Roaches of the world, there's still a lot of misperception. And there is still a lot of that, okay, well, they're hippies or they're just getting, like he said, high to get high or whatever. There's still that really big misperception by a lot of people. And I think that's half the battle still in the state, unfortunately. I think we have a long way to go.
Listen, and the poor teacher who was just dismissed, okay?
Yeah.
And, you know, we had the job protections.
I know,
No, those were the issues this year, Jodi, that we were really hoping to get on the table.
Absolutely.
And, you know, of course, continuation of telehealth, you know, which we drastically need, and, you know, the veterans access and, you know, nursing home and hospital access. Once again, these are the issues that are going to guarantee, Jodi, that you and I are going to continue to have this, you know, continued relationship seriously, because we have battles to fight in this state, you know, and we know that. So listen, I'm setting it right up for you again. Please tell us about, you know, Florida Can and how people can get involved and seriously, because you guys have your 420 show in the afternoon as well. And I want to make sure we queue it up for some contributions, because it's appropriate, everybody. These are the people who are working up in Tallahassee for us.
On the ground.
So
thank you very much.
One more good plug for you, Jodi.
FLCAN.org. It couldn't get any simpler than that. That's how you know how long we've been around, is FLCAN.org. We're following the campaign right now with a /POP. So FLCAN.org/POP, that's Protect Our Patients, is kind of, and we're just detailing kind of a single one place stop that you can find out. We still have a letter writing campaign to Senator Wilton, who is chairman of the Senate right now, president of the Senate, Wilton Simpson. So we're still putting a little bit of pressure on him to not hear the bill. But right now we're still contacting representatives and making sure that nobody is going to hear it in HHS. But again, this is the long game and we play all year. So we don't just need donations during session. We need members at $50 or more a month. I'm sorry, $50 or more a year. Though if you can donate $50 a month, we certainly appreciate it. We use it wisely. We have offices in Melbourne, Florida. If you're ever in town, give us a shout out. And you can often find someone with Florida Cannabis Action Network out and about at one of the events.
Very nice. And for our listeners, we're going to be posting it on our website and actually a tag on to the show after when we post the episode. So please look for that and go give a click and please support Florida Can all you can.
Absolutely. And listen, check out their updates and all that, 420 in the afternoon, various afternoons. And I know you guys had Carlos on, Guillermo Smith last week. It was fantastic.
He's great.
So listen, we're all going to keep on pulling on the rope together. Jodi, great to see you. And thanks for coming into the green room. We'll do it again.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. And if you have any questions and want any follow-up, please send us a message on our Facebook page and see you guys next. Well, I won't be here next.
Oh, you're going to Hawaii.
I'm going to Hawaii, so aloha to everyone.
I know. I think I got to get a guest for the guest host.
Yeah, you'll have to have a guest host.
All right, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Jodi. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Jodi.
All right.